Hi, it's Mark Murphy, and this is TravelTube.com, the place where travel experts share their experiences from globetrotting, from doing hotel and site inspections, cruise ship inspections, you name it. And today I've got Scott Lara, who is a 15-year Navy veteran and a 15-year veteran of the travel agency business. He's also known as the Cruise Genius at thecruisegenius.com. So let me bring Scott onto the stage here. All right, here he comes. All right, and there he is. All right, Scott, welcome
Mark,
to TravelTube.
Mark, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, so you're a Navy veteran. How'd you get into travel?
That's a very interesting question because when I was in the Navy, I just loved being out to sea. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, Scott, I got a travel agency. Will you run it?" It's like, "Put me in, coach. I'll do it." So I started selling cruises because I had cruised so much, like 100 days on Holland America, 80 days on Carnival, Celebrity, NCL, the Blake Shelton cruise, the Groove cruise. And I just fell in love with cruising for a lot of different reasons. Unpack only once. You wake up at a different port every day, the food. I just loved it. And so being a travel agent, I was able to share my passion with others.
Now, is that because you were on like now I'm getting feedback. I'm getting feedback. That's going to be disruptive. So we're going to have to start again. Do you have headphones you can put on? Because I think it's coming through your computer.
Well, I'm on my phone, but
Okay.
I mean, I could take it. Let's go from the top. And I'll take my hearing aids because my VA hearing aids. Let's see here. Let me turn this off. Hold on.
No sweat.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, Light 96.1,
Yeah,
WJZ Jacksonville.
it's when I'm talking that I hear the feedback. Testing, testing.
It's when you're talking?
Yeah, it was that's when I heard the feedback.
Because it shouldn't do that with my hearing aids. Let me put my
hold on
hearing
a
aids
second.
back.
Yeah, hold on a second.
Okay.
I didn't hear any feedback, so I think we might be okay.
Okay. Am I frozen? Oh no, I'm unfrozen. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So testing 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Oh, and let me just say, I wasn't in the Navy for 15 years. I've been a travel agent for 15 years. Okay. So,
Yep.
So how about framing up again? How do I look?
Yeah. Now you want to move it over because you're cut off on the side. Your head the other way because your head's getting cut off by the logo. All right, that should be good. Okay, so I'm gonna take you off, do a quick intro again, and we'll get back to it. Hi, it's Mark Murphy, and this is TravelTube.com, where travel experts share their experiences among other travel experts. And they also get to engage with consumers because consumers more and more want to talk to the actual travel experts, not talking heads like me on TV. All right, that's just that the guys who actually sell the travel, get the feedback from the customers and all that good stuff. Today, I have Scott Lara. He's a Navy veteran who also is a travel agent, and he's been a travel agent for the last 15 years. They call him the Cruise Genius, and he's got a website, thecruisegenius.com. So let me welcome Scott to the stage, and there he is. So Scott, what got you into cruising? Was it sailing on warships?
Absolutely, Mark, and thanks so much for having me on the show. I sailed all over the world: Italy, Spain, France, Suez Canal, Panama Canal, and I just love being out to sea. So a friend of mine owned a travel agency, and he goes, "Hey, Scott." I go, "Hey, what?" He goes, "You want to run my travel agency?" And I said, "Put me in, coach." And so that's when I started sharing my passion of cruising on my website, thecruisegenius.com, 1.3 million views on my YouTube channel. And it's really blown up because unlike Costco, when you go to Costco and buy a cruise, that guy or girl behind the counter has not been to Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, Martinique, St. Barts, St. Kitts. I have, and I can share those specifics, those hidden gems, if you will. So that's what's so rewarding about being a travel agent.
Well, that's cool. And so was your desire to just sell cruises? I mean, you've really niched yourself in the cruise segment, or do you sell everything else? And why'd you make that decision?
Well, I mean, I do sell all-inclusive resorts also. When the pandemic hit, the Palladium Hotel Group reached out to me and said, "Hey, Scott, we'd like to send you to Punta Cana, to Cancun, and to Jamaica to share your thoughts about our resorts." So yes, I sell those also, but Cruising is kind of my passion. Unpack only once, great for families. I have 3 grandkids, and we took our 2 grandsons on an MSC cruise. They had a blast. So I just think cruising is the perfect vacation for families, couples, singles, LGBTQ, you name it. I think it's just the perfect vacation.
So interesting. Now, what is it about cruising that you share with customers that might be beneficial for other travel experts out there like yourself? Like what is the thing that gets them to say, because let's face it, there's a lot of misconceptions about cruising. I'm going to be bored. I'm going to be confined. That was my concern in the 90s. I had never taken a cruise, and ADHD. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be on this freaking cruise ship. And once I got on one, my paradigm shifted, right? Then I was like, man, this is a great vacation. I really loved it. And I've gone on dozens and dozens, but I had to get over that initial hurdle. And I didn't have a choice because we were taking our parents for their 50th wedding anniversary on a princess cruise at the time. And so, I was like, okay, I'm going to get dragged along. But in your case, what is it that you share with customers to get them engaged in that process?
That's a good question. I think when people call me, they've either seen me on TV, they've seen my YouTube channel, they've heard of me on shows like Cruise Radio or other places. And so they already have an interest in cruising. But the number one question I get, Mark, is what's your favorite cruise line? And that's a very difficult question to answer because like my demographic, I'm 63 years old, been married 41 years. I prefer like Celebrity or Holland America Line because there's fewer kids. Now, when we took our grandkids, we went on MSC, which is more family friendly, also been on Icon of the Seas. So I think most people, they know about cruising. I think those objections now are kind of starting to go away. I know with, COVID and with norovirus, that can be a obstacle for a lot of people. And just like you said, I don't want to be trapped on a cruise ship. I want to be able to get off when I want to, and all this kind of stuff. And of course, the bad press about, fights on cruise ships. But I think most people realize that, and especially like with the Super Bowl ad for MSC, they really blew it out of the water, so to speak, to share how fun a cruise can be.
So MSC, a lot of people don't know MSC, right? They've seen the shipping containers, right? But they don't realize that it has one of the youngest fleets, and they're bringing up more and more new ships. It seemed in the beginning years ago, it was almost like a side gig, but now it's becoming a pretty important thing. Tell me a little bit about the MSC experience. Like what is that like for travelers?
That's an interesting question because when they first came into the American market, a lot of people were turned off by it. There's so many people on board, and so it's not as intimate as maybe other cruise lines. The reviews were horrible about the food, but I think as they're progressing, they're doing better and better. It's kind of like with Virgin Voyages. When Virgin Voyages came out, myself as a travel agent and member of the media, I asked the leadership at Virgin Voyages, who is your demographic? And they didn't know until I sailed on Scarlet Lady about a year and a half ago. People my age, people your age, older people. There's a lot of young people on there. But of course, with Virgin Voyages, no kids, adults only. It does skew to people who are, more open, more, wanting to enjoy life and so forth. But going back to MSC, I think they're starting to really, get the handle of what's going on. They're upping their food game. And for family, and it's very inexpensive when you compare it to Carnival, NCL, and Royal Caribbean. And of course, they sail out of Port Canaveral, which is very convenient to me, living in Jacksonville, Florida.
Got it. So that's interesting. So so really what it comes down to, a lot of it could just come down to budgets, right? Because they're not as well known. They don't do a lot of TV advertising, although they just started with the Super Bowl ad we just saw. So that gives you an ability to get somebody sort of into the cruise game. And what kind of a price difference do you see? And is it a price sell? Is it the experience sell? Is it all of the above? Are you getting the same thing, but for less money? What do you tell folks?
Oh, it's totally a price thing, Mark, because the thing is, MSC, Carnival, NCL, you're going to have, shows, you're going to have the buffet, you're going to have specialty restaurants. But I think MSC getting in, if it's a new cruiser who would call me and say, hey, Scott, where are you going to put me? If it's a family or a couple, MSC, Now, if you want that elevated experience, you're going to want the yacht club, just like the Haven on NCL. You want that ship within a ship experience. But, back in the day before MSC, it was all Carnival. I mean, we have a Carnival ship right here in Jacksonville, Florida. But over the last couple of years, Carnival's kind of got a bad rap, for fights and things like that. Now they've hired security officers and so forth to try to change that thought out there that, basically, the thing used to be, the Walmart of the seas. And now with Celebration Key coming on board, with these newer ships coming on board, they're trying to change that narrative. But MSC, I think they're in a very good place. You got the World America coming to Miami here in April. And so I think they're doing a good job. They still got a long way to go regarding the food and having more free food venues. For example, like on the Mardi Gras with Carnival, you got Shaq's Chicken, and you got all these free venues to get food. And MSC really missed the boat, so to speak, on that, where you just pretty much had the buffet, and then everything else was specialty dining. And we all know that in the industry, they're trying to get that revenue, and that's exactly why these cruise lines are doing their private islands. Perfect Day at Coco Cay, Celebration Key, Ocean Cay with MSC, because the cruise line, those accountants up on the 20th floors of their buildings are saying, yeah, I see you smiling. Yeah, the accountants are saying, hey, listen, we're going into all these different ports of call. Let's keep the money in our pockets. And I totally get that. And I've been to Perfect Day at Perfect Day at Coco Cay like 3 times, twice on Celebrity, once on another Royal probably. And it's a great venue, and there's lots of free stuff to do, but there's also, extra pay stuff as well.
Gotcha. So one of the strategies years ago was get them on, because depending on the demographic, if it's a lower price point, you'll get those people on, and they tend to do a big onboard spend. And a comparison might be Carnival to Holland America. Let's say Holland America, the passenger, the onboard spend, I'm just going to make numbers up, is $30 a day. Whereas the Carnival guy, because they might gamble more, drink more, et cetera, they're spending $150 a day. So the cruise line would say, you know what? We want to get them on the boat, because we're going to make more money collectively with that low entry point. Do you think that's part of MSC's strategy?
110%, Mark. And the one thing, giving a plug to Peter Goldstein with Travel Detective. He did a video on CBS.
Peter Greenberg.
Peter Greenberg, thank you. He did a special on that. And if you just type in Peter Greenberg, Cruise Inc., and he was on an NCL ship. This is back in the day with Andy Stewart. And they talked about the finances of it. And every day the accountants on the ship are seeing, are they even, are they behind, or this? And so they give a discount on the spa, or a discount on T-shirts or whatever, so that they can make their money on it. And you're precisely right, Mark. That's very deep, that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that, these cruise lines, they're in it to make money. And, the accountants see the numbers every year. They have stockholders, shareholders, that they got to keep happy. And so that is just a big deal. But, it's all, yes, you're precisely right. And that's what MSC is doing. MSC, in my opinion, are getting people on the ship, just get them on there, and they're going to buy the photos, they'll buy the drink package, they're going to buy the specialty restaurants, and then the cruise lines can be happy financially.
And just to be clear, I know obviously the audience is travel agents, but again, consumers will be coming across TravelTube more and more as we roll out. Interesting enough, do you think that a lot of agents realize that that's the strategy? Because one of the challenges for agents are these non-commissionable fees, right? That's basically a commission cut for all intents and purposes. It's a way to pay folks like you less. That also happens when you're selling a product that's all about the onboard spend as opposed to the upfront cost. What would you tell travel agents? Are they better off recommending a higher yield product, because they can lay out, listen, if you want the best experience, it's not always going to be the cheapest initial price, and here are the reasons why. And I think you recently got off a Celebrity cruise, which right. is obviously a different level than, let's say, an MSC cruise today. Right. How much do you think out of pocket people go comparing the two? And we'll forget gambling for a second.
Well, that's why you make a very interesting point on this about non-commissionable NCFs. Virgin Voyages has totally broken the mold in many different ways. They don't have NCFs. So if you take an hour of your time and maybe you sell 2 or 3 Carnival cruises, you make 10, 15 bucks, whatever, just on the base rate. With Virgin Voyages, they're giving you like, I think 16% commission, if I'm not mistaken. And so you're getting a great commission, and then you can make money on the bar tabs. You can make money on the excursions. So that's another thing the cruise lines need to look at is, our commission, because it goes back to what I say, and I say this on every TV interview. You go into Costco, you get the $50 or the $100 gift card at Costco, and that person behind the desk knows nothing about these ports of call. And so, yes, I understand the consumer wanting to save some money, but the one thing I'd recommend to my fellow travel agents out there, you got to prove value. And you got to be on LinkedIn. You got to be here on TravelTube. You got to be on Facebook, all these things to prove, because back in our day, Mark, you remember that, every corner had a travel agency, right? And they had the Hawaiian music. The person would come out and put a lei on you. You'd have all the brochures. And it was an experience when you walked in that travel agent's office. Now there's so many online agencies. You got Expedia, Travelocity, all these other people, Google Cruises, whatever. And they're not getting that personalized service. And that's where I've had what success I've had, by being on TV, being out here, being on YouTube, sharing those experiences, because we all know you buy from who you know, you like, you trust. And I think a lot of people, like me, they trust me, and they're willing to purchase a cruise from me.
So interesting. And your YouTube channel. So let me just show folks what that looks like. Let me just go to that. Hang on one second. There he is. Bam. Okay. So this is your YouTube channel, and you've got a lot of stuff here, and it looks like there's a lot of stuff on here that's just keeping them updated. You're letting them know about different things here and there. How much time do you have to put into this, and what's the payoff for you? What do you
that's a very good question. I'm not making a lot of money on Google ads. I'm really not. I make money on sponsorships. For example, cheap plug, I'm a brand ambassador for Scootaround. They are a company that has these scooters. I'm a brand ambassador for GigSky. GigSky is this eSIM company that provides an alternative to the high price of Wi-Fi. So it's not just, my YouTube channel. You have to have multiple streams of revenue. And so being a brand ambassador is really kind of like my bread and butter. And also, you noticed on there, I talk about the Non-Commissioned Officers Association. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. So a lot of travel agents and a lot of consumers don't know that many cruise lines offer discounts to the military. I think Carnival's probably the big one on this. Virgin Voyages is now starting to come up on this. And the one thing, too, is status match. You were mentioning about MSC Cruises, right? MSC and Virgin Voyages does status match. What does that mean? I'm a 3-star mariner on Holland American Line. I have like over 100 days. Well, then you go to Virgin Voyages or MSC, you plug it into their computer, and when you're doing your booking, or you can tell your travel agent, and then you get status match. Now, you're not going to get every single thing. You're not going to get like free laundry or a free cocktail, but you'll get something, right? And so whatever you have the most status, like my most status is Holland American Line. My second most status is probably Carnival, being platinum. But that's something travel agents need to tell their consumers also is, maybe you've been on NCL or you've been on Royal, you want to try Virgin Voyages, you want to try MSC. I think that's a good thing. And again, that goes back to providing value.
So interesting enough, what percentage of agents do you think know that?
I would have to say like 30 to 40%. There's a lot of new agents that have recently come into the market. I'm sure that cruise planners and these other franchise companies are teaching and training their travel agents on social media. But I'll tell you, Mark, I got into YouTube for one reason, and that was to make my family and friends jealous. Years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago, I won a flip camera, and very inexpensive. It wasn't 1080p or 4K or anything. And we would go on the Carnival Fascination right here in Jacksonville. And sadly, the Fascination and the other fantasy class ships have now gone to their rest, with the exception of the Elation that's here in Jacksonville. But I would get on there. If you look at my old videos, hey, Scott, Lara, the cruisegenius.com, Carnival Fascination, and I would just share my tips. And that's where I really took off. I mean, I'm not Mr. Beast yet, but just sharing that on YouTube, and then people would see it, and then they would call me if it was an all-inclusive resort, if it's about travel, and then, asking about, the eSIM, or asking about a scooter, or asking about shore excursions. That's where you as a travel agent are going to really win, by sharing that experience and sharing that expertise with your audience.
Now, you've been doing a series of interviews with your local TV station there.
Yes.
And how does that work? So, I mean, I know how it works, but why don't you tell other agents the benefit of that? Because I've always said over the years, if there's a local community paper, because what's interesting is newspapers are dead, obviously, generally speaking. A lot of mainstream media dead, but when you're in your local community, people want that local news. So I lived in a little town called Morristown where we raised our kid. I think it was called the Morristown Sun. And I would look at that paper, and there's ads in there, there's columns in there, but it's all talking about the town, the local sports. That is a great environment to get published in, right? And just say, just go to their location, or send them a note and say, hey, I've got some great content, because I'm not even going to charge you. I'm just going to give it to you because you're going to get the exposure. As far as the local TV, you can do the same thing. And you've been doing that for how long now?
Oh gosh, I've been doing it for about 10 years. Now, I am giving away one of my secrets here, okay? I should really publish an ebook on this and make $1 million. But for you and your audience, I'm going to give this away for free. Just subscribe to my YouTube channel and we'll be good. So the thing is, what you do, the fact of the matter is, these reporters, these TV news stations, every day they're looking for their next story. And we all know what sells in news: death, murder, crime. That's what, if you watch your local newscast, see how many good stories there are. There are very few good stories. Yeah. And so they're looking for the good stories. And the one thing you got to look at is, like, for example, passports, right? And Mark, I know you've reported on this. When you see something in the news on CNN or somewhere about passports either taking too long or taking shorter or whatever, what you got to do is find a reporter at your local TV station. And you don't need to go down to your TV station. You can do a Zoom call, just like we're doing here.
Yep.
And you call the reporter, right? Don't email the news tips, because they're just gonna, okay, we get all these tips, we don't need to hear it. But find a reporter, find their bio on WJXT.com, and say, hey, Tina, this is Scott, thecruisegenius.com. Please put me in your Rolodex. Again, that's old school. And I'm your guy. If there's ever a cruise story or a travel story that you want to report on, I am your man.
Yep.
For the folks on here, if you remember the Costa Concordia story, when that happened, the next day I got a phone call from the local TV station. Hey, Scott, can you come on talking about the Costa Concordia? I said, I'd love to. And so I ran down there, and it was in the studio, and talked about from what I knew, the captain getting too close and so forth, and talking about cruising. But my local TV station calls me all the time. Hey, Scott, what about passports? Hey, Scott, what about travel advisories? Hey, Scott, what about, these new big ships coming online, big ships versus small ships? I was recently on Channel 4 here in Jacksonville talking about the new cruise ships coming online, the MSC World America, about the Star of the Seas. And now I'm getting really interested in river cruising. And so I'm a waterways, because when they say river cruising, everyone thinks Viking. That they've done a ton of marketing on it. Everyone knows who Viking is. And some people know who AMA Waterways is, family owned, and so forth. They're going down the Danube and all these places. But the way to get on TV is just to email or call that local reporter and say, hey, I'm Scott Lara. I've been a travel agent for 10 years. I'd love to be able to share any travel tips. And again, you got to speak quickly, succinctly, and just watch, either me or Mark, and you'll see how we do it on TV. You're just succinct and talk about it, very fact-based. You try to stay away from the political thing. For example, to throw this out, and Mark and I talked about this the other day, it was floated by the administration about cruise lines being taxed. And if cruise lines are going to be taxed, that's going to, make it so that we're going to all pay more. So I called my local reporter here in Jacksonville. Hey, if you ever want to do a story on this, I'm available. And so just being accessible, I think that the news media really likes that. Look, quick story too. I remember there was an incident. I forget exactly what happened. It was a bad incident with the cruise industry. And I was at my son's wedding reception, the dinner you have before the wedding. And I got a call like 30 minutes before I was supposed to give my speech about my son getting married. And I went in the hallway, got on my phone. I did 3 TV interviews, one in Miami, one in Ohio, one in Jacksonville, about something going on with cruising. And so I did these quick Zoom interviews. They needed them right then. And at the end of my 3rd interview, I get a text from my daughter, Dad, you're up. You got to give your speech, talking about Timmy's, getting married here. So when you're accessible like that, it may not be a 9 to 5. You may get a call at 8 o'clock at night, or maybe on a Saturday. Hey, there's a breaking cruise story. For example, like Holland America, they just reported their 3rd norovirus attack in the last month or so. I'm expecting today, I'm going to get a call from a news source saying, hey, Scott, 3 norovirus things, what's going on? But being on TV, I'll tell you, that's huge.
Yeah, it gives you that street cred with the customer. It's funny you brought that up. When the Costa Concordia sank, I got a call from Janine Pirro's show up at Fox News, but I was having a party, a Final Four party, I believe is what it was, at my house. And we had 80 people coming to this party. And I got in a car service and left to do the interview. And then, for me at that point, it was like an hour and a half up, an hour and a half back. You're only in the chair talking for 4 or 5 minutes max. And, but I left everybody at my house, and I was trying to build an online brand. So I did that. I'm not proud of this. My wife supported it, but I left my wife on a boat in St. Bart's the night before her birthday, went over to St. Bart's, flew over to St. Martin, connected to go to New York to go do a show in New York. And my logic was, when they call, the answer is yes.
Yes.
And, you have to be able to put things, you have to have folks around you that you can rely on if you want to do that. And you have to pay a price.
Mark, I've got to say, I want to hug you through the phone here, because you're precisely right. Every time I get a call from Channel 4 here in Jacksonville to go down and do an interview, you know what my wife says? You don't get paid to do that. Right. And again, being the patient, loving husband like you are and like I am, honey, let me explain it to you. And they don't want to hear it, right? Honey, when I go on Channel 4, or it's like when you go on Fox, you cannot pay for that kind of exposure. Right. I'm on their website. It gets blown out to everybody. That's why Miami TV stations, Ohio TV stations, California TV stations. Yeah, here's a secret too. Go on Google and type it about Google Alerts and put in the word cruise. And then every day you're going to see the 10 or 12 top cruise stories. And when that happens, the cruise lines see that, the media sees it, and cruise, influencers and everybody sees that. And so when I'm on Channel 4, Scott Lara talking about passports, boom. And then it goes exponentially from there. And besides that, I love being on TV because of my hair. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think you're competing with Trump right now. You're looking pretty good there, pal. I think you got him edged out. I think you got him edged out in the hair category. Yep. That's fun. Yeah. What people don't understand is, I could go on a show, you go on a show, and it gets whatever the viewership is. But it's the stuff that happens afterwards that gives it legs. It goes up on YouTube. It's on their website. People start sharing it. And then all of a sudden, there are plenty of times that I've done a segment, and then that segment gets far more viewership via social media and other outlets than it ever got when it was live. I would say the only difference is when you do a national program like the Today Show, something like that, that's when you get 2.5 million live viewers. And here's what I would tell folks. When you do something like I remember getting the first booking on the Today Show. I'd had a book that had come out a few years later, and I did a series of interviews. And then, it's very hard to get on that show. Once in a while, they'll hit you back, but very rarely. And I remember the book came out, and the next time I did an interview with them, they wouldn't show the book. And, I'm not going to mention it because it's not part of what we're doing. But then the one day that they flashed the cover of the book. It was a cool infographic, introduced me. And I was like, yes, because that's going to sell a ton of books, right? So here's the reality. 2.5 million live viewers, give or take. Let's say between 2 and 2.5. Guess how many books got sold?
10.
3. Wow. I mean, so if you're doing it to sell something, it's never going to work. If you're doing it to establish and build your reputation and build your brand, then it's a work in progress that's going to be like putting bricks in a wall, and it is going to help you big time, when the time comes, because all of a sudden you're going to wake up one day and you're going to say, holy cow, you know what I mean? I'm getting business because of this, and I'm getting calls because of this. And I think that that's been your exact experience, because it's been.
Well, I will say there is one danger when you do this, is that you get recognized. And so I've been on different cruises, Holland America, Carnival, Virgin Voyages, and some cruises I go with my wife and some without. But usually when I'm with my wife, a female will usually come up to me. Excuse me, are you Scott Lara? Yes, I am. And I'm your biggest fan. I've watched your videos. Can I get a picture? So guys, if you're a guy travel agent, just let your wife know. People may come up to you. Ladies, if you're a travel agent, and I think Mark, you probably know the numbers. I'm guessing there are probably more female travel agents than male travel agents.
Absolutely.
But, ladies, be prepared. If you're going on a cruise to relax and stuff, that's the one thing you got to be prepared for, because if you ever been to Half Moon Cay, you got Captain Morgan's Bar. It's a pirate ship, and you go up to the second and third deck and you get some great pictures. My wife and I walked up to the third deck to get some pictures, and I know that look. And this lady looks at me, you're Scott Lara.
Well, you know what? It's kind of interesting, because on my end, what ends up happening is kind of similar, but maybe a little different. Here's what happens to me. I go ahead and I say to, I was at a consumer travel show in LA. Guy comes up, sees my book, because we're hawking the book. I got a nice stand, and as I'm sitting there, he says, hey, I really love your TV show. And I go, okay, he has no idea who I am, because I don't have a TV show. And then I said, so he's like, oh, well, yeah, he goes, read your show. And I watch it all the time. And I looked at him and he's like, I really want to buy your book because, blah, blah, blah. Will you sign it for me? And I said, well, listen, before you buy the book, I think you got me mixed up, because I don't think I'm the guy you think I am. And then when I told him that, he just slowly just looked at me. Oh, and he started to put the book down on the table, and he put it down and turned and started. He's like, sorry, started walking away. And then he reversed course. And he's like, I'm going to buy it anyway, because you might be famous someday. And I was able to get the $20 for the book and sign it for him. So not as glamorous, not that exciting. I get mistaken for other people most of the time. My wife knows who I am, at least for now. We're young enough that we know who each other are.
Well, I will tell you, I usually wear glasses on TV or on interviews. I don't, but on Holland America, especially because it's an older demographic, people think I'm Rick Steves from PBS, and God bless Rick Steves. Rick has been doing this many, many years. He just announced that he is cancer-free from prostate cancer. God bless you, Rick. Love you. And so, yeah, it's, again, just that caveat. If you are going to pursue this to be a media personality, to do a blog, to do YouTube or whatever, that is, I want to say, the downside of it. But for me, I love it. I love when people come up to me. I love when they have heard or seen what I've done. I love it when they book with me, because, again, it goes back to trust. And like with you, Mark, and myself, they trust us, because if the media has us on TV, then there's some degree of trust there. But I mean, I've probably been on Channel 4 in Jacksonville 20 or 30 times talking about passports, COVID, you name it.
Yep, absolutely. So interesting. What would you give as advice to somebody who wants to break into the cruise market and develop a business there? Like, what would be your top 2 or 3 items?
Well, number one, you got to know you got to know the stuff, right? So you got to go on MSC, you got to go on Virgin Voyages, you got and see this stuff, experience this stuff firsthand. You know, Mark, back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, you know, the cruise lines were a little more free with giving out familiarization cruises, right, where we would go for free or at a discount, so we could actually feel, touch, and see the brand and share that. Because like, Mark, if you came up to me and said, Scott, you got to see that new Top Gun movie. Okay, well, Mark, you're my friend. It was a good movie. Okay, I'll go. And that's the way you sell things. It's by being passionate about it. And so I guess, you know, if somebody's just breaking into the cruise industry, being a travel agent, know your stuff, right? Don't rely just on YouTube videos like Cruise Radio or the Cruise Genius or anything like that. Go out there and actually experience it yourself so you can share your passion for it. And then the number one question you're going to get as a new travel agent is, you know, what's your favorite cruise line? Well, the answer to that question is it depends. You know, are you, you know, older? You know, is it a 30 couple, 30 years old? Is it an LGBTQ couple? Is it a solo person? Like, you know, I just saw something the other day that Carnival will not be doing solo cabins, but NCL is doing solo cabins. Virgin Voyages is doing solo cabins. So, and there's and that's another thing we could do a story on sometimes about these solo cruisers. That's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And so I think you got to know your product, right?
All right, but hold on a second. Is that because their spouse has gone off to heaven, or is that, you know, what are we talking about here?
That's a good question, Mark. I think
I'm sorry. That's the first thing I thought of. I've got a dark sense of humor. I'm sorry.
No. Listen, I got that same sense of humor. The reason why that is, my brother, is because of a podcast called Fresh and Fit. And Fresh and Fit are these guys in Miami.
Oh, you cut out.
People are not getting.
Yep. Yeah, you cut out.
Okay.
So you said Fresh and Fit.
More and more. Yeah, Fresh and Fit podcast, right? So the thing is that these two guys in Miami are doing, it's a huge podcast telling men not to get married. And so a lot of people are choosing to wait later to get married. I don't know about you, but I was 22 when I got married, right? Yep. I got my two kids that are grown. I got 3 grandkids. But my son Timmy, he didn't get married till he was like 34, and his wife was 34. My daughter didn't get married till she was like 31. So there's a lot of people that are wanting to experience life. And so they're going to do all this solo travel. If it's hiking, backpacking, you know, mountain climbing or cruising, they want to experience that themselves. For example, my son Timmy, after high school, he backpacked through Europe and read all of Rick Steves' books on backpacking. And so I think that's why solo travel is so big now. Both men and women want to kind of experience things themselves, then get married and have kids and settle down. But like I said, going back to the Fresh and Fit podcast, these guys tell it straight up to guys, you know, marriage is a losing proposition. You know, you're going to lose your money, you're going to lose your house, you're going to lose your kids. Don't get married. And so I think that's what the real big advent of seriously, Fresh and Fit, check them out. Buckle up.
I know that's obviously been, you know, that's kind of like the Tate brothers.
Yeah, Andrew Tate, right?
Exactly. You know,
exactly. That's out there. And girls too, they're waiting. You know, these girls nowadays, they are not waiting. They're not, you know, 18, 19, 21 years old. They're waiting till 35, 36 or whatever to get the bag and get their career and all this stuff. And they're waiting longer to get married.
Yep, you're right about that. You're right about that. It's a lot of market segments, a lot of insights from the Cruise Genius here. Scott, thank you for joining me today. Have a great rest of your day. And I'll let you know when we're live with this. And, you know, good sailing and good selling.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Take care.